The Zephyrian Empire had ruled the galaxy for over 3,000 years. Their crystalline ships moved like silver ghosts through space, and their technology was so advanced that most species considered them gods. Commander Veltar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Times Eternal Dominion *, watching the holographic display show another successful conquest. The Kitani homeworld burned below them. The bird-like aliens had refused to surrender their mining colonies, so the Zephyrians had simply taken everything. Veltar's forearms gestured at the tactical display, his blue-scaled face showing no emotion as refugee ships fled the dying planet. "Another primitive species learns its place," he said to his crew. The bridge officers, all wearing the same crystalline armor that marked them as superior beings, nodded in agreement. "Send word to the High Council. The Kitani territories are ours." Veltar had conquered 47 species in his career. Each time, the pattern was the same. The aliens would resist at first, thinking their crude weapons and simple tactics could challenge Zephyrian might. Then, reality would hit them. The Zephyrians didn't just have better technology. They had perfected warfare itself. Their ships could phase through solid matter. Their weapons could destroy planets, and their shields could stop anything the galaxy threw at them. The communications officer, a young Zephyrian with silver markings on his scales, looked up from his station. "Sir, we're receiving surrender requests from 17 different systems. Word of the Kitani defeat has spread quickly." "Good," Veltar replied. "Schedule surrender ceremonies for each system. Make sure they understand the terms. Complete submission, tribute payments, and military service when required. Standard Imperial Protocol." SPAR. The Zephyrian Empire operated on a simple principle: submit or die. Most species chose submission. Those who didn't were turned into cautionary tales. Veltar had made his reputation by being particularly efficient at creating those tales. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority message. The holographic display shifted to show High Admiral Kithara, the supreme commander of all Zephyrian forces. Her ancient features were marked with the golden scales that indicated her royal bloodline. "Commander Veltar," she began, her voice carrying the authority of absolute power, "you are to redirect your fleet immediately. We have a new situation that requires your expertise." Veltar straightened. The High Admiral only contacted field commanders directly when something serious was happening. "What are your orders, Admiral?" "A species has been discovered in the Outer Rim. They call themselves humans, and they inhabit a planet called Earth. Initial contact was made 3 days ago, and their response was unusual." The display showed a recording of the first contact. A human ship, crude and blocky compared to Zephyrian vessels, had approached a scouting fleet. The human captain, a female with short dark hair, had appeared on screen when communications were established. "Greetings," the human had said. "I'm Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Navy. We come in peace and hope to establish diplomatic relations." Standard first contact protocol for the Zephyrians was simple: demand immediate surrender and begin occupation procedures. Captain Zixtha had followed protocol perfectly. "I am Captain Zixtha of the Zephyrian Empire," he had replied. "Your species is now under Imperial rule. Prepare for occupation and integration into our forces. Resistance will result in planetary sterilization." 2. The human captain had been quiet for a moment. Then, she had smiled. Not the fearful grimace of a beaten enemy, but something else entirely. Something that had apparently unsettled the Zephyrian captain. "I see," Captain Chen had said. "Well, in that case, I need to inform you that you've just declared war on Earth. I hope you understand what that means." The recording ended. High Admiral Kithara continued her briefing. Captain Zixtha reported the humans as compliant and proceeded with standard occupation procedures. However, when his fleet reached Earth 3 hours later, they encountered unexpected resistance. The next recording showed space around Earth. Veltar had to admit he was impressed by what he saw. The humans had built impressive orbital defenses for such a young species. Massive space stations bristled with weapons, and hundreds of ships moved in formation around their homeworld. But impressive for a primitive species still meant nothing against Zephyrian technology. Captain Zixtha had ordered a demonstration. A single shot from his flagship's main weapon should have destroyed the largest space station and sent a clear message about resistance. Instead, the beam had been absorbed by some kind of energy field around the station. Impossible, Veltar muttered, studying the recording. It gets worse, the Admiral continued. The humans then opened fire with weapons we've never encountered before. Watch carefully. The human ships began firing, but these weren't energy weapons or kinetic projectiles. They were launching what appeared to be metal spheres that moved slowly, compared to normal weapons. Captain Zixtha had ordered his fleet to ignore them, confident that their shields would handle anything the primitives could produce. The first sphere had touched a Zephyrian destroyer's shield, and simply passed through it like it didn't exist. The sphere had then made contact with the ship's hull, and detonated with enough force to crack the vessel in half. Shield penetration technology, Admiral Kithara explained. Something we've never seen before. Captain Zixtha lost 4 ships before he ordered a retreat. The humans didn't pursue, but they sent a message. Captain Chen appeared on screen again, but this time, she wasn't smiling. Her expression was cold and professional. This is Captain Chen to the Zephyrian fleet. You attacked without provocation and killed 3,000 of our people. Consider this your only warning. Leave our space immediately, or we will consider your presence an act of war. The recording ended. Veltar was quiet for a moment, processing what he'd seen. In 3,000 years of expansion, no species had ever forced a Zephyrian retreat. The technology alone was disturbing enough. But the human's attitude was what really bothered him. She had spoken like someone who expected to win. What do we know about their planet? Veltar asked. That's where it gets interesting. Admiral Kithara replied. Earth is what our scientists classify as a death world. Extreme gravity, violent weather, aggressive ecosystems, and frequent natural disasters. Most Zephyrians would die within minutes of setting foot on the surface, without environmental suits. Veltar nodded. That explained some things. Species from death worlds were usually more aggressive and resourceful than others, but they were also rare and typically destroyed themselves before achieving space travel. More importantly, the Admiral continued, our intelligence suggests this isn't just one planet. The humans have colonized dozens of worlds and have been spacefaring for over 200 years. They've been expanding steadily and have apparently been preparing for eventual contact with other species. Preparing how? Military buildup on a scale we've never encountered. Every human colony has orbital defenses, and their ship production capabilities rival our own. They appear to have been expecting a hostile first contact. Veltar considered this. Most species were shocked when the Zephyrians arrived because they assumed other intelligent life would be peaceful. These humans seem to have assumed the opposite. Your orders, Admiral? Take the Third Fleet and neutralize this threat. The humans have embarrassed the Empire, and that cannot be allowed to stand. Make an example of them that will remind the galaxy why they should fear us. The connection ended, and Veltar immediately began issuing orders. The Third Fleet was the Empire's elite force, consisting of 200 of their most advanced warships. If the humans wanted to play with technology, they would learn why the Zephyrians had conquered the galaxy. 3 days later, the Third Fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the human solar system. Veltar stood on his bridge, studying the tactical displays. The humans had been busy since the first encounter. Their orbital defenses around Earth had been reinforced, and more ships were visible than in the previous recordings. Sir, the sensors officer reported, we're detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system. The humans appear to have fortified every major planet and asteroid. Veltar nodded. Standard siege tactics. They're trying to make every inch of space costly for us to take. It won't matter. Open a communication channel to their homeworld. The main screen activated, showing Captain Chen again. This time, she was on what appeared to be a military command center. Surrounded by other human officers, behind her, displays showed the positions of both fleets. "Commander Veltar, I presume," she said. "I've heard of your reputation. 47 conquered species, billions of casualties, and not a single defeat in over a century of warfare. 48 species after today," Veltar replied. "Captain, your resistance to the first contact team was impressive, but ultimately meaningless. You face the full might of the Zephyrian Empire now. Surrender, and your people will be allowed to serve the Empire. Continue to resist, and Earth will be reduced to cosmic dust." Captain Chen was quiet for a moment, studying something off-screen. When she looked back, her expression hadn't changed. "Commander, before we begin, I think you should understand something about humans. We're not like the other species you've conquered. We didn't develop on a peaceful world where cooperation was the key to survival. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every single day. We learned to fight before we learned to talk. We've been at war with something or someone for our entire history as a species. Your evolutionary history is irrelevant," Veltar said. "Primitive aggression cannot overcome superior technology." "Maybe not," Captain Chen agreed. "But here's what I think you don't understand. When you threatened Earth, you didn't just threaten one planet or one government. You threatened our children, our families, and our future. And humans, Commander, we don't respond well to threats against our families." She paused, and Veltar noticed other humans appearing on screens behind her. Military officers, government officials, and civilians. All of them had the same expression Captain Chen wore, not fear. "We've been preparing for this day since we first looked at the stars and wondered what else was out there. Every human world, every colony, every ship was built with one question in mind. What if they're hostile? Today, we get to find out if we prepared well enough." Captain Chen stood up. "Commander, I'm going to make you an offer. Leave our space now, and we'll pretend this never happened. Stay, and you'll discover why evolution made humans the apex predators on a death world." Veltar had heard enough speeches from doomed species. He cut the communication and turned to his officers. "Begin the attack. Target their orbital defenses first, then move to planetary bombardment positions. Show them the futility of resistance." The Third Fleet opened fire. 200 Zephyrian ships unleashed their weapons on the human defenses around Earth. Energy beams capable of melting mountains struck the space stations, while kinetic projectiles that could shatter continents targeted the defensive platforms. For a moment, it looked like a standard Imperial victory. The human defenses were overwhelmed by the sheer volume of fire. Then, something unexpected happened. The orbital stations began to move. They weren't space stations at all. They were massive ships, disguised as stationary defenses. As they repositioned, their true purpose became clear. Each one was a weapons platform larger than a Zephyrian battleship, and they had been hiding their capabilities until the Empire committed to an attack. The human fleet also revealed itself. What had appeared to be a few hundred ships suddenly became thousands as stealth systems deactivated throughout the solar system. The humans had been lying about their numbers from the beginning. "Sir," the tactical officer called out, "we're detecting massive energy buildups from the human vessels. They're preparing to fire." Veltar stared at the display in disbelief. The humans hadn't just been preparing for contact with other species. They had been preparing for war with other species. This wasn't a desperate defense by a primitive world. This was a carefully planned military operation by a species that understood exactly what they were facing. The human ships opened fire, and Veltar watched his carefully planned assault turn into chaos. The shield-penetrating weapons they'd used before were just the beginning. The humans had developed an entire arsenal of technologies designed specifically to counter Zephyrian advantages. Some weapons bypassed shields entirely. Others seemed to turn the Empire's own defensive systems against them. Still others delivered payloads that caused Zephyrian ships to simply stop functioning. "Retreat," Veltar ordered. "All ships, fall back," to jump distance, but the humans weren't done. As the Third Fleet tried to withdraw, more ships appeared from the outer system. Faster vessels that had been positioned to cut off any Zephyrian escape routes. Commander Veltar, the conqueror of 47 species, watched his fleet being systematically destroyed by creatures that had crawled out of a Deathworld's gravity well, with nothing but determination and an understanding that the universe was not a friendly place. The last thing he saw before his flagship's main power core was breached was Captain Chen's face on the communication screen. She wasn't gloating or celebrating. She just looked tired. "You could have chosen peace, Commander," she said quietly. "We really did come hoping to find friends among the stars. But we've always known we might find enemies instead. The thing is, we've had plenty of practice dealing with enemies. The times Eternal Dominion times exploded in silence, and with it died the myth of Zephyrian invincibility. Aliens begged for mercy. Until the Deathworlder fleet arrived. The news of the Third Fleet's destruction reached the Zephyrian High Council within hours. High Admiral Kythara stood in the crystal chamber where the Empire's leaders had made decisions for millennia, watching the holographic recordings of the battle with growing disbelief. The council members, 12 of the most powerful Zephyrians in existence, sat in stunned silence as the tactical analysis played out before them. Ship after ship of their elite fleet had been methodically destroyed by weapons and tactics they had never encountered. "Impossible," whispered Counselor Velthane, his golden scales dulled with shock. "No primitive species could possess such technology. Our scouts confirmed they only achieved faster-than-light travel 200 years ago." High Admiral Kythara paused the recording at the moment when human stealth ships had revealed themselves around Earth. "They've been preparing for this encounter far longer than we realized. Our intelligence was completely wrong about their capabilities." "How?" demanded Counselor Zix-Ara, her crystalline claws scraping against her throne. "We've been monitoring primitive species for thousands of years. We know how technological development works. No one progresses this quickly." The Admiral called up another display, showing analysis of human technology recovered from the battle. "Their approach is completely different from ours, where we perfect each technology to its absolute limit. They develop dozens of different solutions to the same problem. Their ships carry 7 different types of shields, 6 different weapon systems, and apparently have backup systems for their backup systems." She highlighted a section of the analysis. "More importantly, their technology isn't just advanced. It's specifically designed to counter our advantages. These aren't weapons developed for fighting other humans. These are weapons developed for fighting us." The oldest council member, this is Zara, leaned forward. Her scales bore the deep blue of extreme age, and her voice carried the authority of someone who had lived through the Empire's greatest expansions. "Explain." "They've been studying us," the Admiral said simply. "Somehow, these humans have been observing our conquest methods and developing countermeasures. Their shield-penetrating weapons work by exploiting a specific frequency variance in our defensive matrices. Their stealth technology is tuned to avoid detection by our sensor arrays. Even their ship designs are optimized to minimize the effectiveness of our targeting systems." Counselor Velthane stood abruptly. "Are you suggesting they've been watching our military operations? For how long?" "Unknown. But given the sophistication of their countermeasures, I would estimate decades at minimum, possibly since they first achieved interstellar capability." The implications hit the Council like a physical blow. For centuries, they had assumed their superiority was so absolute that primitive species posed no threat. The idea that someone had been quietly studying their methods and preparing to fight them was almost incomprehensible. "What of their fleet strength?" asked Counselor Zix-Ara. "How many ships do they actually possess?" Admiral Kythara called up another display showing the human solar system. Red dots marked confirmed ship positions, while yellow dots showed possible contacts. The display was almost entirely red and yellow. Conservative estimates suggest at least 5,000 combat vessels in the Sol system alone. Our long-range scouts have identified similar buildups around 17 other human colonies. If their military production capabilities match what we observed, they could potentially field more ships than our entire empire. Silence fell over the chamber. The Zephyrian Empire controlled most of the galaxy through the simple expedient of having overwhelmingly superior forces. The idea that some upstart species from a single star system could match their numbers was terrifying. "Recommendations?" asked Thisisara finally. "We mobilized the entire First Fleet," Admiral Kithara said. 10,000 ships, including the Devastator-class dreadnoughts. We crush them before they can expand further. And if they have more surprises waiting? The Admiral was quiet for a moment. Then we may need to consider alternatives to direct military action. Those words hung in the air like a poison. The Zephyrian Empire had never considered alternatives to military action. Their entire civilization was built on the principle of absolute dominance through superior force. "There is another concern," Admiral Kithara continued reluctantly. "Word of the Third Fleet's defeat is spreading. We've already received communications from subject species asking about the rumors. If news of this defeat becomes widespread, it could inspire rebellion throughout the Empire." Councillor Velthane slammed his fist on his throne. "Then we make sure the humans are crushed so thoroughly that no one will dare question our strength again." But before anyone could respond, alerts began sounding throughout the chamber. A communications officer entered at a dead run, his young scales almost white with panic. "High Council," he gasped. "We're receiving priority transmissions from dozens of worlds. There's been an incident in the Corvan sector." The main display shifted to show the Corvan system, a major Imperial stronghold that served as the administrative center for nearly 50 subject worlds. The system housed over 10 billion inhabitants and was protected by one of the Empire's most powerful defense fleets. "The system is under attack," the officer continued. "The defense fleet is requesting immediate reinforcement." "Under attack by whom?" Admiral Kithara demanded. The officer's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "Humans, Admiral. The entire system is under attack by human ships." The display zoomed in to show space around Corvan Prime. Hundreds of human vessels were engaged in battle with the Imperial Defense Fleet. But these weren't the same ships from Earth. These were larger, more advanced, and bore different markings. "How is this possible?" Councillor Zixara demanded. "Earth is over 500 light-years from Corvan. Even if they left immediately after the battle, they couldn't have arrived yet." Quote, Admiral Kithara was studying the tactical display with growing horror. "These aren't ships from Earth." "Endoth," she said quietly. "Look at the design variations. These are ships from different human colonies. They've launched a coordinated attack across multiple sectors." More alerts began sounding. Communications were coming in from Imperial bases throughout the galaxy. The humans weren't just attacking Corvan. They were attacking everywhere, at once. "Sir," the communications officer said, his voice shaking, "we're receiving surrender demands from the human fleet at Corvan. They want to speak with the High Council directly." Thisisara gestured for the communication to be opened. The main display showed a human male, older than Captain Chen, with gray hair and scarred features. Behind him, the bridge of his ship was clearly visible, along with displays showing the ongoing battle. "I am Admiral Marcus Rodriguez of the United Human Navy," he said without preamble. "I'm speaking to the Zephyrian High Council, and I have a simple message for you." He paused, studying something off-screen. 3 days ago, your forces attacked Earth without provocation. You killed civilians and attempted to conquer our homeworld. We consider this an act of war against all humanity." The display behind him showed a Zephyrian battleship being torn apart by human weapons. "We've been preparing for this possibility since we first learned we weren't alone in the galaxy. When your scouts began appearing in our space 2 years ago, We knew it was only a matter of time before you decided we were worth conquering. Admiral Kythara leaned forward. How did you know about our scouts? Our stealth technology is superior to anything most species possess, Admiral Rodriguez finished. But we're not most species. We've been tracking your movements since your first ships entered human space. We know where your bases are, what your fleet strengths are, and how your command structure works. The human admiral gestured to his tactical display. Right now, human fleets are attacking 47 Imperial strongholds simultaneously. We've been positioning ships for over a year, waiting for you to make the first move. Every major Imperial base, shipyard, and command center is under assault. The council chamber erupted in chaos as different members began shouting orders and demands. Admiral Rodriguez waited for the noise to die down before continuing. But here's the thing, he said, his voice cutting through the commotion. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We don't want to build an empire or conquer other species. We just want to be left alone to grow and explore in peace. He leaned closer to the camera. So, I'm going to make you an offer. End your attacks on human space, recognize our sovereignty, and agree to non-aggression accords. In return, we'll stop this offensive and withdraw to our own territory. Councillor Velthane stood up, his scales flushed with rage. You dare offer terms to the Zephyrian Empire? We have ruled this galaxy for 3,000 years, and you can continue ruling most of it, Admiral Rodriguez replied calmly. Just not the parts where humans live. We're not interested in your empire except as neighbors. Good neighbors who respect boundaries. And if we refuse? Asked Thisara. The human admiral's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes grew colder. Then we continue this war until one of us can't fight anymore. And I should probably mention that Earth was just one colony. Humanity has been expanding for 2 centuries. We have over 300 worlds now, each one building ships and training soldiers, each one protected by orbital defenses that make Earth's look primitive. He gestured again to his tactical display. You've been conquering individual species, one at a time, for thousands of years. We've been preparing for a war against an entire galaxy-spanning empire. The question is, are you prepared for a war against us? The display showed another Imperial ship being destroyed, then another. The human admiral continued speaking as the battle raged around him. We studied your tactics, your technology, and your psychology. We know you're used to fighting enemies who panic when they see your superior firepower. But humans don't panic. When we're scared, we get angry. When we're angry, we get creative. And when we're creative in a war, very bad things happen to our enemies. Admiral Rodriguez stood up from his command chair. I'm giving you 6 hours to consider our offer. After that, we'll assume you've chosen to continue this war, and we'll respond accordingly. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in absolute silence. Outside, alerts continued sounding as reports came in from across the Empire. The humans weren't just attacking military targets. They were systematically dismantling the Imperial infrastructure that allowed the Zephyrians to control so much territory. How many ships do we have left? Asked Thisara finally. Admiral Kythara consulted her tactical displays with shaking hands. Initial reports suggest we've lost nearly 1/3 of our total fleet strength in the first wave of attacks. The humans are targeting command ships and supply bases specifically. They're trying to cripple our ability to coordinate a response. And they're succeeding, added Councillor Zixara bitterly. Thisara stood slowly, her ancient joints creaking audibly. In 3,000 years, no species has ever challenged the Empire like this. How did we not see this coming? We've heard people talloning round by, because they planned it that way, Admiral Kythara said quietly. They've been manipulating our intelligence gathering from the beginning. Every report we received about human capabilities was carefully crafted to make them appear less threatening than they actually were. She called up a final display showing human ship movements across the galaxy. Red arrows indicated attack vectors, while blue lines showed supply routes and reinforcement paths. The pattern was unmistakable. This isn't just a military campaign, she continued. It's a masterpiece of strategic planning. They've been positioning assets and gathering intelligence for years. When we attacked Earth, we weren't starting a war. We were walking into a trap that had been 2 centuries in the making. The oldest council member sat back down heavily in her throne. For the first time in her long life, she understood what it felt like to be afraid of another species. "What do we do?" she asked. Nobody had an answer. The Zephyrian Empire, masters of the galaxy for 3 millennia, had finally encountered something they didn't know how to fight, a species that had been preparing to fight them since before first contact was ever made. Outside the council chamber, alerts continued to sound as human fleets completed their systematic dismantling of Imperial power. The age of Zephyrian dominance was ending, and something new was beginning. The humans had kept their word about one thing. They really had come in peace. But they had also come prepared for war. And now the galaxy was going to learn the difference between those 2 very different approaches to diplomacy. Aliens begged for mercy until the Deathworlder fleet arrived. The 6 hours Admiral Rodriguez had given the Zephyrian High Council passed in chaos. Reports continued flooding in from across the Empire as human fleets systematically dismantled 3,000 years of Imperial infrastructure. What had once been an orderly galaxy-spanning civilization was rapidly becoming a collection of isolated worlds cut off from their masters. High Admiral Kithara stood before the emergency session of the Council, her normally pristine crystalline armor scorched from her hurried flight back to the capital when her own command center had come under attack. The tactical displays around her painted a picture that would have been unimaginable just days before. "Status report," commanded Thisasara, the ancient counselor who now served as the Empire's de facto leader. "We've lost contact with 60% of our sector commands," Kithara reported, her voice hollow. "Human forces have captured or destroyed 17 major shipyards, 34 supply depots, and 41 regional command centers. Conservative estimates put our remaining effective fleet strength at less than 40% of pre-war levels." Councillor Velthane, his golden scales now dull with exhaustion, leaned forward in his throne. "How is this possible? They're just 1 species from a handful of worlds. 347 worlds, Admiral Kithara corrected grimly. "Our intelligence was wrong about everything. The humans have been expanding steadily for 2 centuries, but they've been hiding the true extent of their territory. Every colony we thought was a minor outpost is actually a fully militarized world with its own fleet and industrial base." She called up a new display showing the true extent of human space. What the Empire had believed to be a small cluster of worlds was actually a region nearly a quarter the size of Zephyrian territory, all connected by hidden supply routes and protected by coordinated defense networks. "Worse than that," she continued. "They've been infiltrating our space for decades. We found human observation posts in 17 systems we thought were secure. They've been watching us, learning our patrol patterns, mapping our defenses, and planning this offensive for generations." The display shifted to show intercepts of human communications. Admiral Kithara, translated as, "The Council listened to recordings of human military coordination. Phoenix Base to Eagle's Nest. Target Package Alpha is secured. Imperial shipyards are offline. Eagle's Nest to all units. Phase 2 is go. Begin liberation operations." "Liberation operations?" asked Councillor Zixara. Admiral Kithara nodded grimly. "They're not just attacking our military assets. They're contacting subject species directly, offering them independence and protection if they rebel against Imperial rule. 7 species have already declared independence and requested human protection." The council chamber erupted in angry voices, but Thisasara raised a clawed hand for silence. "Show me." The display changed to show a recording from the Vorthok homeworld. The reptilian species had been under Imperial rule for 800 years, serving as laborers in Zephyrian industrial centers. Their planet was now surrounded by human ships. But instead of bombardment, the humans were broadcasting messages. Captain Chen appeared on screen, the same human who had first encountered the Empire. "People of Vorthok, This is Captain Sarah Chen, of the United Earth Navy. We know you have suffered under Zephyrian occupation for centuries. Today, that ends. We offer you independence, protection, and the right to determine your own future. The recording showed crowds of Vorthok gathering in their cities, many of them weeping as they listened to the human broadcast. For most of them, it was the first time in generations anyone had spoken to them as equals rather than property. We ask nothing in return except that you treat other species with the same respect we offer you. The age of empire is ending. The age of free peoples is beginning. The recording ended, and Admiral Keith Era pulled up status reports from across Imperial space. 12 species have now declared independence. 3 more are in open revolt. The humans are systematically dismantling our entire system of control. What of the remaining fleets? Asked Thisisara. Can we mount a counter-offensive? Unlikely, Admiral Kithara replied. The humans struck our command and control infrastructure first. Most of our remaining ships are scattered and unable to coordinate effectively. Additionally, they seem to have complete intelligence on our remaining assets. Every time we try to mass forces, human ships appear to stop us. An alert chimed, indicating an incoming priority communication. The main display activated to show Admiral Rodriguez again, but this time he was on a different ship. The bridge behind him was larger and more impressive than before, clearly a flagship of some kind. High Council of the Zephyrian Empire, he began formally. Your 6 hours have expired. Since we haven't received a response to our offer, we're proceeding to the next phase of operations. Thisisara stood slowly, her ancient frame trembling with exhaustion and rage. Human, you have attacked the sovereign territory of the Zephyrian Empire. We demand immediate cessation of hostilities and reparations for the damage you've caused. Admiral Rodriguez studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Counselor, with respect, you're not in a position to make demands. Your fleet is scattered, your infrastructure is crippled, and your subject species are abandoning you. This war is already over. We still have the First Fleet. Velthane interjected. 10,000 ships, including our most powerful dreadnoughts. We can still crush your pathetic rebellion. You had 10,000 ships, Admiral Rodriguez corrected. As of 20 minutes ago, that number has been significantly reduced. The display behind him shifted to show space around the First Fleet's staging area at Zephyrus Prime, the Empire's military headquarters. The massive Zephyrian dreadnoughts, each one the size of a small moon, floated dead in space. Around them, human ships moved like schools of predatory fish. Your dreadnoughts are impressive, Admiral Rodriguez said, but they were designed to intimidate primitives who had never seen anything like them. We've seen them. We studied them. And we built something better. The display zoomed in to show one of the human ships responsible for the attack. It was sleek and organic-looking, completely different from the blocky vessels they'd used at Earth. This ship moved through space like a living thing, its hull seeming to flow and shift as it maneuvered. The Times Deathrong asterisk, Admiral Rodriguez said, with what might have been pride. Our newest design, grown rather than built, using biotechnology we developed from studying Deathworld ecosystems. It can adapt to any weapon system in real time, regenerate from damage, and most importantly, it thinks for itself. The recording showed the bioship engaging a Zephyrian dreadnought. The massive Imperial vessel unleashed enough firepower to sterilize a planet, but the human ship simply absorbed the energy and redirected it back at its attacker. Within minutes, the dreadnought was drifting helplessly while the bioship moved on to its next target. We have 300 of them, Admiral Rodriguez continued. Each one unique. Each one designed for a specific role in this war. Your first fleet lasted approximately 43 minutes. The council chamber fell silent. The First Fleet had been the Empire's ultimate weapon, The force they used when absolutely nothing could be allowed to survive. The idea that it could be destroyed in less than an hour was incomprehensible. "What do you want from us?" asked Thisara quietly. Admiral Rodriguez's expression softened slightly. "What we've always wanted. To be left alone. But since that's clearly not possible while your empire exists in its current form, we're going to help you reorganize." The display showed a map of the galaxy, with new borders marked in blue. These are the new boundaries. The yellow areas represent species that have requested human protection. The green areas are species that have chosen to remain independent but allied with the human coalition. The red areas are what's left of your empire. The council members stared at the display in horror. The red areas represented less than 10% of their former territory. "This is unacceptable," Velthane declared. "The Zephyrian Empire will never accept such terms. Then the Zephyrian Empire will cease to exist," Admiral Rodriguez replied, matter-of-factly. "We're not negotiating with you, Counselor. We're informing you of the new reality. You can adapt to it, or you can be removed from it." Thisara raised a clawed hand to silence Velthane's angry response. "What guarantees do we have that you'll honor these new borders?" "Our word," Admiral Rodriguez said simply. "Humans have a concept called honor. When we give our word, we keep it. We're offering you the same thing we've offered every other species. The right to exist freely within your own territory, as long as you respect the rights of others to do the same. And if we refuse?" Admiral Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight that hadn't been there before. "Then we'll do what we should have done to begin with. We'll treat you the same way you've treated everyone else for 3,000 years. The display behind him showed images from recently liberated worlds. Zephyrian labor camps, where alien species had been worked to death. Cities destroyed because their inhabitants had refused to surrender quickly enough. Entire planets strip-mined to fuel the Imperial war machine. "You see, Counselor, we've been learning about your empire while we prepared for this war. We know about the slave worlds, the extermination campaigns, and the billions of sentient beings you've murdered in the name of Imperial expansion. We know what you really are. His eyes grew cold. "We came to the galaxy, hoping to find friends among the stars. Instead, we found monsters. And humans. Counselor, we have a long history of dealing with monsters." The images on the display changed to show Earth's history. Wars, genocides, and struggles that had forged humanity in the crucible of a Deathworld's unforgiving environment. Soldiers charging through poison gas, civilians fighting with improvised weapons, entire populations refusing to surrender even when facing extinction. We know what evil looks like because we've fought it on our own world for thousands of years. We know how to recognize it, how to fight it, and how to destroy it completely. The only reason your empire still exists is because we decided to give you one chance to change." Admiral Rodriguez leaned forward. "But if you choose to continue being what you've always been, then we'll finish what we started. And when we're done, there won't be enough left of your civilization to fill a history book footnote." The transmission ended, leaving the council in stunned silence. Outside, alerts continued to sound as the last remnants of Imperial authority crumbled across the galaxy. Thisara looked around at her fellow council members, seeing her own despair reflected in their faces. "We need to vote," she said finally. The vote was unanimous. The Zephyrian Empire, masters of the galaxy for 3 millennia, formally surrendered to a species they had tried to conquer just 1 week earlier. Later, as the surrender documents were being transmitted to the human fleet, Admiral Kithara found herself alone on the observation deck of the council chambers, looking out at the stars her people had once ruled without question. A young officer approached her cautiously. "Admiral, the humans are requesting a meeting to discuss reconstruction assistance." They want to help us transition to what they call a peaceful civilization. Admiral Kithara laughed bitterly. Reconstruction assistance. They destroy our empire and then offer to help us rebuild as something better. What should I tell them, Admiral? Kithara was quiet for a long moment, watching human ships moving through what had once been the most secure system in the galaxy. Tell them we accept, she said finally. And tell them we're sorry. It took a war for us to learn what they understood from the beginning, which is, the former High Admiral of the Zephyrian Empire turned away from the stars. That there's a difference between being powerful and being strong. We were powerful. They were strong. And in the end, strong always wins. The greatest empire in galactic history had fallen not to superior weapons or overwhelming numbers, but to a simple idea that humans had carried with them from their Deathworld home, that freedom and dignity were worth fighting for, and that any species willing to fight for those principles would never truly be conquered. The age of empire was over. The age of equals had begun.